The rock he stood upon is broken up and. Welcome back. Just a reminder, your discussion board is due tonight, so you should be working on that. Watching the Enron movie, and I had sent around an email about the answers that ChatGPT gave to the discussion board questions, so you might take a look at that and see whether you agree or disagree with the claims that ChatGPT made. So I'm going to take attendance. I see there are only 17 people here, which is about half the class. I'm going to take attendance early in the class, and people should be here on time. So I'm going to take off for lateness. Let me find my my attendance sheet. This is the 9 o'clock class, so I will save that and close it. And okay, so all right, people are still trickling in. So let's start with attendance. If you're here, please let me know. If not, forever hold your peace. Farhad Abdul.
Here.
Thank you. Ahmed Al-Kador.
I'm here.
Hello.
Hi.
Mohammed Afi. Jenna Bell.
Here.
Hello, Jenna.
Hi.
Joseph.
Here, Professor.
Okay. Jiamin Chen.
Here.
Hello. Janine Kola. Janine. Kermia Cyrus. David Esterovsky.
Here.
Hello. Marimar Garcia.
Here.
Hello. Monica Garcia. Some more names. Monica. Is Monica here? Okay. Jordan Glenn Williams. Alexia Harrigan. Alexia. Hold on. Yusuf Kahan.
Hey, Professor, I'm here.
Hello. Salima Kahanam. Salima. Georgie Kermishvili.
Here.
Hello, Georgie.
Hello.
Summer Lamb.
Here.
Hello. Hongjian Lin.
Here.
Hello. Hamdi Mali.
Here.
Hello.
Hello.
Kara Mystery. Kara Mystery. Aya Musa. Aya. Ludley.
Here.
Hello.
Yes, here. Can you hear me?
Gotcha, Ludley.
Okay.
Famita Padwari.
Here.
Emmanuel Planakis.
Yeah,
Lam-
Flamakis. Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Raquel. Raquel okay. Raquel Porteous. G. Shan Ruan.
Professor, I'm here.
Hello. Brendan Samuel.
Morning, Professor.
Good morning, Brendan. Aliyah Todd.
Here.
Hello. Stacy Ergiles.
I'm here.
Hello. Denasia Warner. Denasia. Jack Wu.
Present, I'm here, Professor.
Okay. Yayin Jiang. Yayin Jiang. Yichuan Zhang.
Here.
Hello. Matthew Zhao.
Here, Professor.
Hello. Okay, now we'll take the, I'm gonna read off the names of the people who were not here when I called them the first time. If you're here, please let me know. If I don't call your name, it's because I have marked you present. Mohammed Afi. Janine Cola.
I'm here.
Hello, Janine. Kermia Cyrus.
I'm here.
Hello. Monica Garcia. Jordan Glenn Williams. Alexia Harrigan.
I'm here.
Hello, Alexia. Danny Jiang. Not here, Danny.
Here.
Salima's here.
No, it's Kenny. Kenny Jiang.
Kenny Jiang, okay. Kenny Jiang. Gotcha. Salima Kahanam. Kara Misri. Aya Musa. Ludley I have. Denasia Warner. And Yayin Jiang. Okay, so now try to get here on time.
Hi, Professor. Raquel Portis is here.
Yes. Okay, I got you.
Hi, Professor. This is Taryn. I emailed you this morning.
I'm
Taryn.
sorry, I missed it. What, Tara, what's the last name?
Taryn Sander, Sander.
Okay. Oh, you're new in the class?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Your last name is Sander, Sander,
That's correct.
and first name Karen,
Taryn, Taryn.
Taryn. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I recall the email. Glad you've got it, got my response.
Hey, Professor, just checking in with you. I also emailed you over the weekend regarding enrolling into your class.
Okay, and what's your last name?
Mendez, Mendez.
Okay, first name?
Christian, Christian.
Christian, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, so you two are new. So.
Professor, did you got my names on it?
Who's speaking, please?
Zishan,
What's your last name?
RUAN.
Oh, Jijan. Yeah, I have you. You didn't say,
Thank you.
I don't know what happened. I thought I heard you say you were here. Okay, that sometimes happens. All right. So, so as of now, there are just 4 people absent. Mohammed Athi, Monica Garcia, Alexia Harrigan, Salima Kahanam. Oh no, because there's more. Maybe some of them dropped it. Kara Disri and Aya Musa, and also Denasia Warner and Yayin Jiang. Those people aren't here, but I have a lot more students in the class than I used to, so I'm not sure what that means. Probably some of them dropped. Okay, so I'll keep this open in case more people.
Wait, Professor, sorry. The
Yeah.
students' name, those are ones you said that aren't present. I just said I'm here for Alexia Harrigan.
Yeah, I had you. Hold on.
Okay, thank you.
It was a Jordan Glenn Williams who's not here. Harrigan is here. Okay. Okay, so today I'm going to finish up talking about the chapter 1 material, and we'll move into the chapter 2 material. And also, just a reminder, the discussion board on Enron is due this evening. So you should be working on that. You should have watched the movie. I noticed, I was looking over the textbook this morning, and I noticed that in the introduction of chapter 5, which I had assigned for today, the case study is about the rise and fall of Theranos, which is also like a similar kind of case to FTX and to Enron. So I mean, it's one more example. And this the gal that orchestrated it, Elizabeth Holmes, was very much in this tradition of Jeff Skilling and Jack Madoff and so on, that she was, you know, they were overtly lying and pressuring the employees to lie and all kinds of stuff. I recommend that case study. It's an excellent case study about Theranos, which is still being talked about. I hear about it in the media quite often to this day. And as often occurs with these scams, I've fallen for scams myself a few times, and you know, I've lost some money because of it. And I would also say that a lot of it's quite common that even fairly sophisticated people who have better credentials even than I have fallen for these kinds of things. And I think it's always a question: how do you judge whether someone is lying to you, whether someone is conning you? And it's often hard. It's often hard to do. But I think one thing is to always be conscious of inconsistencies in their narrative. A look for evidence of dishonesty in their past. So if someone wants to go into business with you, I mean, one thing you might look at, which I would say is important, is their credit record. Like, get them to give you their credit record and see what is on it. I mean, if they've got delinquencies on, they haven't repaid loans, and they've got delinquencies on their credit cards, and they've had lawsuits or whatever, this really is not someone you want to be doing business with. And I would say there are a lot of indicators. We maybe later in the semester we'll talk about, but basically, I think a big question is that often a deal that's too good to be true is too good to be true. And I recall, I mean, to you guys, this is ancient history, but to me, I remember like it was yesterday. I remember seeing Ken Lay on television or sometime around 2000, right? Not long before the disclosures about the crooked accounting became public. And incidentally, they were forced to make the information public by someone on Wall Street, a trader named Jim Chanos, who is a famous short seller and made a fortune selling Enron stock. He short sold the stock and went to the media and gave the Wall Street Journal evidence of ongoing accounting irregularities, and the journal started to investigate it. And the original authors of the book, Enron, the smartest guys in the room, were the ones from the journal who had done the investigation. And when they started to break the story, the stock started to tank, and as the news exploded, the stock crashed. And I was retained to do expert witness work a few years afterwards on the story. So I read a couple of the main books on it, like Enron, the smartest guys in the room, and Conspiracy of Fools. I think it's by Eichenwald. And basically, they're great books, and it's a fascinating story. And one thing that I noticed, I was going through the transcripts of their employee meetings, and and there's televised stuff of this, that idiot HR executive, you can see her right in the movie. And basically they were telling at that meeting, they were telling the employees to buy the stock, and that was occurring at the very time that Skilling, Lay, the HR manager, and a number of the other top people, I think like the guy who shot himself in the beginning was one of them too, were selling the stock. They were selling the stock while they were telling the employees to buy the stock. And, this was like truly criminal, because the poor people, these were like blue collar workers who worked on telephone lines and stuff like that. And they lost everything. They lost their whole retirement because they had been conned into putting their money into the stock. So like these type of people can do serious harm. I mean, very, very serious harm to others. And, and that includes the FTX people and Theranos and all the other ones, Jack Madoff, and on and on. And so, I think, I was telling the other class, I think you have to ultimately blame the morality and the personality traits of the perpetrators of these misdeeds. But at the same time, the kind of economy that we have created, when I say we, not that I have created it or even participated, because I've tried to stop it, I've protested it, but the public at large has created this economy where you've got extremely low interest rates, which pushes up the value of speculative investments and makes it easy for scammers who can tell a good story, like the Theranos story, or for that matter, FTX, to convince people to put their money into these scams. And it's the interest rates and the easy money that, I'm not saying it wouldn't occur without them, but it makes it a lot easier and it makes it a lot more common for these things to occur. Years ago, the Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises, over a century ago, in 1912, wrote a book, The Theory of Money and Credit, and he says in there that when you go into a pure paper money system, it creates what he called malinvestment, that the easy money and the low interest rates cause people to make investments they wouldn't make if interest rates were higher, because less profitable firms can flourish. And this is exactly what the Keynesian economists want, because they say, well, more businesses can start, so there's more employment and more people are working. But the truth is that these are less productive businesses. So you're stimulating, as interest rates go down, you're stimulating less and less productive businesses. And it's not surprising that the malinvestment, the investment in the less productive businesses, spills over into criminality. It's like a continuum. It's not a black and white thing. It's like you're starting businesses that wouldn't exist in a free market because you press down interest rates lower, and that's okay. But it's going to eventually cause a stock market crash. But you keep pressing down interest rates, and then you start getting things that aren't real at all, that are just scams. And that, because low interest rates facilitate, they vastly exaggerate, as you reduce interest rates, the valuation of future returns gets boosted up. The present value of the future dollar gets boosted up the lower the interest rate. And so stocks automatically go up. And so somebody with an imagination can tell a deceitful story and get huge valuations on that deceitful story. And so I think our economy at large contributes to this widespread kind of psychological deviance that we see in things like Theranos, Enron, and FTX. So in any case, there were a couple of things I wanted to review from the last class before we get started on personality. And basically, the definitions of management, I want to go over again. I don't think I did that too well last time. First of all, Henri Fayot was an early 20th century industrialist from France, and he argued that there are 5 management duties, and these can be viewed as the classical definition of management. And what he said they are is planning, organizing, coordinating, directing or leading, and controlling. So Fayot's 5 management duties: planning, directing or leading, coordinating, controlling, and planning, organizing, coordinating, directing or leading, and controlling, that these are what constitutes management. The progressive author, Mary Parker Follett, who wrote a lot about teamwork, says that management is getting things done through people. So she saw management as primarily interpersonal. Another definition of management is by Deming, who was one of the major, I would say the biggest founder. There were a number of important ones, Duran, Crosby, but Deming was the biggest figure in this establishment of total quality management. Argued that management is the reduction of variance of outputs accomplished through reducing the variance of inputs. So in other words, he argued that there are all systems have variation, and the variation has special causes and it also has systemic causes. The special causes are things that top management can eliminate individually. So if you're dealing with 25 different suppliers and they all give different size inputs, you can eliminate 24 of them and just use one and make sure they have the same inputs. But you can also eliminate variance through establishing a system that's self-correcting. And this is the essence of TQM, total quality management, which is based on statistical process control, that the employees working on the outputs make sure that the outputs are all consistent. And there's a whole process for that. So basically, this idea of the reduction of the variance of outputs had a huge effect in improving a lot of products in our economy, especially automobiles. When I first bought a car in 1975, it lasted 100,000 miles. The cars now last 200, 300,000 miles. And that's precisely because of the ideas of Deming and Duran and more important, and equally importantly, the lean manufacturing concepts of Taiichi Ono in the Toyota firm. He wrote a book called Toyota Production System, which is a classic and a truly brilliant, but very simple discussion of how lean manufacturing works. So these methodologies are alternative definitions of management. Another approach was taken by Mintzberg, who wrote a book early in his career where he had observed 10 management roles that he divided into categories of interpersonal, informational, and decisional roles. And the interpersonal roles include stuff like figurehead, leader, and liaison. The informational roles include monitor, disseminator, and spokesperson, and the decisional roles include entrepreneur, disturbance handler, and resource allocator. Basically, the thing I really wanted to bring to your attention today is the work of Luthans and Rosenkrantz in a series of articles, some of which they wrote with a guy named Hodgetts.
Okay, I found this on the web for a series of articles that some of which they wrote with a guiding hot.
Jeez. I lost the video context. Somehow I'm getting this weird thing popping up on my screen. I don't know why, but I'll figure it out later. So anyway, there's some chat comments I should.
I don't know what that means.
Jeez.
If you
I don't want you to say, go away, my friend. On it there. Where did it come from?
okay,
So basically, they resolved Theranos. Holmes was found guilty. Very good. Okay, that's a good point. I guess that's why I've been hearing about it. Okay, Brandon wanted tell us about the Martin price gouging. Do you mean is interesting along with the financial crisis? The 2009 financial crisis was probably there was like widespread. I don't know if it was corrupt or just plain stupid. There was widespread speculation on real estate using derivatives. There's a great book, if you're interested, in 2009, 8, and I realized 2007, And one of my former students emailed me and told me to short banks, and I didn't do it. And I wish I had. I would have made money, but basically, the 2007 to 9 fiasco was, I would say, more a matter of stupidity than corruption. There's always some corruption when there's that much stupidity. But basically, if you look at, there's a great book, The Colossal Failure of Common Sense, by, I'm looking up on the web, by Larry McDonald is his name. It's a really great book. He was a trader at one of the firms. Was it Lehman? I'm trying to remember now. And yeah, I think it was Lehman. And he specialized in trading real estate. And they went to the head of the firm and they said, "Get out of real estate. It's a mistake. We've concluded we're at the market top. It's a mess." And the firm had bought huge investments in real estate. It wasn't just derivatives. It was all kinds of massive investments. They had bought something like tens of thousands of private houses in the billions of dollars. And they had bought the largest office building in Paris. And on, and huge derivatives bets as well on real estate, mortgage derivatives, and so on. And instead of listening to them, the guy, the head of it, fired them. And within a few months, the whole thing collapsed. And you really got to wonder to what degree that was just stupidity and to what degree it was corrupt. But basically, the two often overlap. So there's a lot to think about there. Now, the thing I did want to talk about is the Rosencrantz and Hodges stuff. And what they did was they wrote this book, Real Managers, and they looked at people who were considered successful and people who were considered effective. And the difference is that if you get the job done and you do a good job, you're effective. If you get promoted and you make more money, then you're successful. And they asked people to identify who was successful and who was effective. And what they found is this: they looked in 4 areas. What they call traditional management, which was Fayot's definition: planning, directing, coordinating, etc. Communication, human resources, and networking. And they tried to determine how most managers spend their time, how effective managers spend their time, and how successful managers spend their time. And what they found is very important for you to consider. In other words, average managers spent 32% of their time on the traditional task, planning, controlling, etc., 29% on communication, 19% on networking, and 20% on HR management. In contrast, successful managers spent less than half, a little more than half their time on traditional tasks. So they cut the traditional tasks almost in half. They spent about the same amount of time on communication, and they spent double the amount of time, almost double the amount of time on networking. So more than double. So networking for average was 20%, for the successful managers 48% of their time. So in other words, successful managers spend their time networking, whereas average managers spend their time on traditional management tasks and HR. If you look at effective managers, they spend about the same or more on HR as the average managers, but they spend much more time on communication. Okay, so to be effective, you communicate. To be successful, you network. All right, so now can you be both? You can be both successful and effective, but very few are both. All right, so basically, if you want to be successful, network. If you want to be effective, communicate to your employees. There's also, so basically, you know, what your book says is that there's a conflict between success and effectiveness in this sense that successful managers spend more time on networking, while effective managers spend more time on communication. But I mean, if you reduce traditional management tasks, delegate those, spend more time on effective and more time on communicating, you can be both. Okay, so basically, what?
Professor, question. So the success and the measurement of the effectiveness, is it based on the individual manager's output, or is it based on the collective impact of the manager?
The way they measured success and effectiveness was by how other people evaluated the managers. So they had everyone evaluate each other and identify who the successful people were and who the effective people were. And then based on the assessments of the other people, that's how they defined everybody.
Okay, so then it would be on impact.
Okay, if you want to put it that way, that's fine. So basically, there's a lot to think about there, because this goes with what I've said, I think, already. If not, I will say it more again, that if you want to be successful, you need to network. And you need to engage in informational interviewing, you need to network, you need to develop contacts. Now, of course, the research that Luthans and Rosencrantz did was a long time ago. All right, so obviously things have changed since then. However, I would say that the finding about networking is more true now than it was then. Okay, so as important networking always was in corporate success, today, you know, I sent you that tape by Sam Ovens. And if you looked at it, I mean, a lot of getting a client base, if you're going to be a consultant, is developing relationships. So you need to network. And a lot of the gig economy, which we're going to be talking about during the semester, means that you have to develop connections to employers, because you're only going to work temporarily for multiple employers. So the way you do that is networking. So, I mean, what they found then was more true now. And that's also true, I would add, about interpersonal skills. Okay, interpersonal skills are at least as important now as they were then. When I taught at NYU back 22 years ago, I taught an MBA class there, and I was saying the same thing. And a guy said to his friend, and he, you know, sort of said it to the class, "Oh, that's all true. That's all true in the past, but now with computers, we don't need to worry about interpersonal skills." The internet was still new then, and I said to him, "That ain't going to change." back in the 1980s, a guy named John Nesbitt wrote a book called Megatrends. And one of the things he says in there that's been true the whole time is high tech means high touch. The more that technology dominates, the more you need people to work with other people to help them deal with, you know, the stress, the adjusting and so on. So that's not going away. Another point that I should mention, your book mentions, I've probably mentioned it already, but just to make sure I did, is globalization. All right, globalization is an extremely important issue. When I was in graduate school in the 1980s, it was incredibly hot. It was exploding. And at that time, there was still communism in the Soviet Union. And I went to a seminar at the Practicing Law Institute. They let me go for, they let students go for free. So I went there, and a lawyer who represented Pepsi-Cola was talking about, he had made a deal with the Soviet Union to exchange, to sell Pepsi in the Soviet Union in exchange, and the ruble wasn't convertible, so they couldn't pay for it. So they used, what they did was Pepsi agreed to distribute Stolichnaya vodka in America in exchange for the Pepsi that they were selling in Russia. And he said, and this is our first ad, and he turned on an ad starring Michael Jackson, who was current then, and he was singing the Pepsi ad in Russian. And I almost cried. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was like, I said, this is like a new universe, you know, and it was. It changed. A lot of things changed dramatically. Not that there wasn't globalization. I mean, we'd always done business with Europe and Japan and Asia, but you know, it became you know, the end of communism in the Soviet Union and the export of jobs to China. This all changed radically. Now, today it's changing again. And the reason is in part, the system, I think, was badly conceived. If we had used just a market system without intervention, and we kept stable currencies based on on a metallic standard or some kind of stable standard, and didn't manipulate currencies, and we didn't play games with the World Trade Organization and the IMF, and we left everything to market forces, I think things would have been a lot more stable, and the globalization that occurred would have been much more enduring. But what happened was they set up this crazy trade relationship with China, where China was buying US dollars and treasury bonds in exchange for exporting us manufacturing. So with extremely low interest rates, it cost almost nothing to move a plant to China, and in exchange they got low wages there. And normally what that would do is it would debase our currency. We were buying stuff from China and they weren't buying anything from us, so you know, our currency would become worthless and we wouldn't be able to keep moving to China. But instead, what they did was they set up this deal: we're going to keep printing dollars and you're going to keep buying them. So we're going to keep the system going in perpetuity through this crazy financial arrangement. It was bad for the Chinese people because they were working for low wages, much lower wages than they should have been. And, you know, and the jobs all exited. So it created this instability stuff. And then the new premier of China, Xi Jinping, is, you know, it's a bit of a nutcase. And so basically they've gone from, you know, everyone thought they're going to move in the direction of more liberalism and there's going to be stability, but instead it went the other way. And, you know, this created more calls for protectionism and so on. And, I won't go into that stuff, but there has been more protectionism. And it was, part of it was this reaction to loss of jobs. But, the simple truth is, if you look at the job market now, there's too many jobs and too few people. The problem isn't that we don't have jobs here. So like this thing, we need to move all these jobs back is absurd. Who's going to do them? We can't fill the jobs we can't fill. I can't find a plumber, so we're going to get more jobs here, so it's like insane. But in any case, so there's been a sort of a backward, attack, let's say a reversal, let's call it, of globalization. And, I don't know what's going to happen, but now because there's increasing security concerns, people are talking about war with China. I'm not saying there's going to be, I don't believe there is, but the Wall Street Journal had an editorial on Friday or Saturday about that. And, so these things are, militating against globalization. So I'm not saying globalization is going to go away. We're always going to have a global economy. And I don't think there's going to be a war with China. I don't believe that. But I think that these concerns are causing, a reversal of globalization. The other thing I should mention before we get into the personality stuff is the issue of ethics, very important. And I wrote a paper a number of years ago that I never published about how OB is really just ethical. It's just a reduction of ethics. And I think when you watch the movie The Fog of War, which is, you'll get a chance to see Robert McNamara and see what he was like. And basically, the book, The Best and the Brightest by David Halberstam is about the Kennedy administration, but two of the chapters in the book, 12, I think it's 12 and 13, are specifically biography of McNamara. And the way he depicts McNamara in that book is that he was obsessed with statistics and lacked common sense. And he turned all military decision-making into a statistical process, that he based everything on statistics. And what Halberstam says in the book is that it was the stupidest idea in history, and it basically completely didn't work. And you can apply that same criticism to OB, to the subject. That, in other words, what I said last time and what Robbins and Judge say is that statistical decision-making works better than ordinary non-statistic. You're not using statistics. And it may be true that if you have some statistics available, that they can be integrated, but you should never allow the system to drive your concerns. And one of the big mistakes, and which would make any kind of research on that subject very suspect, is that when you use statistics excessively, what it does, it reduces your objectives. So in other words, you say, our goal is to make a profit. And so you make a profit and you maximize profit, but then you disregard other concerns. This was the mistake Walmart made about 15 years ago. And I'm not criticizing them. I admire Walmart. I think they did a lot of great stuff for the public and for the economy. And I think they did a lot more for the public and the economy than the critics of Walmart ever did. But what they did was they focused on reducing costs, and they just focused on reducing costs. And they came up with a lot of brilliant ideas. And part of the reason we're not poorer than we are today is Walmart. That, in other words, they revolutionized retailing and made goods much cheaper for us. And so we're much better off as a result of their innovation. But what they didn't do was they didn't take into account the social ramifications of what they were doing. And they stopped unions, which most companies do, but they became targeted. They were targeted by the labor movement and attacked repeatedly in the media and elsewhere. And there were movies about them. There was one, Walmart, the high price of low cost, or something like that. The high cost of low price, or something like that. And so basically, they didn't think broadly. And I think that's one of the real dangers of OB, is that it narrows the way of thinking. And if you look at, and of course they protest and they say, well, we care about ethics, ethics is important. And, I think part of the reason the ESG movement caught on was that there was this kind of narrow thinking. But the irony of the ESG movement is that it's the same kind of reductionism that OB is, and that McNamara was. That, in other words, they turn it into these narrow focuses of these politically correct target causes, and instead of thinking broadly about ethics. And so I think ESG is a failure. But basically, the first person to write about the link between ethics and success was Aristotle. And he wrote 2,500 years ago, he wrote a book called the Nicomachean Ethics. And he talked about how ethics is a matter of balance, and there are certain excellences that it's usually translated as virtues, but I would call it excellences that people can adopt and integrate. And so being successful would mean balancing these different excellences. So when we think of successful, we think of, well, you make a lot of money, you move up in the world, but he saw that as one factor, but only one of many. And it was part of it, but it's not the only one. For instance, it could be athletic triumph. You could win at the Olympics, or you could have a great deal of good judgment and make good decisions. And you can combine all these excellences in different ways. And that's really what mattered to him. And, he had his own view. He didn't see the world we did. We see success more in monetary and financial terms than he did. He saw that the pursuit of politics and philosophy were the greatest goods, the greatest virtues. But we don't agree on that. But in other ways, we can see this idea that you have a broad perspective and you combine different excellences in ways that reflect your own personality. All right, so basically, personality is the sum of ways in which an individual reacts to and interacts with the world. And personality traits are enduring and constant and consistent, and they can be changed only gradually. So I sent you guys the Sam Ovens video. One of the things Sam Ovens says is that he looks at some of these personality measures, not because he sees them as defining him, but he sees them as things that he needs to change within himself. That, in other words, he talks about the Myers-Briggs personality inventory, and he asks, how can I change myself given the results of the test? But the thing about the Myers-Briggs and other personality measures is that these things can't be changed easily. They have to be changed very, very slowly. And so we should view our personalities as relatively permanent and not things that change. But if we do want to change them, it'll take time to change them. One way we change them is by the kind of work we do. So if you are doing a kind of work that requires an extroverted personality, but you're an introvert, you might change into becoming more extrovert. Or if you're an extrovert and you're doing a kind of work that requires a more introverted personality, you might become more introverted. Okay. John Holland created this idea of person, organization, and fit theory. And basically what that says is that it's very simple, that people should fit their jobs. And he put forward a test to determine whether you fit any one of 180 occupational titles based on 6 types, which are illustrated in the textbook in figure 5.1. And the types are, first of all, realistic, emphasizing skill, strength, self-coordination, investigative, involving thinking, organizing, and understanding, artistic, which has to do with ambiguous and unsystematic mindset and activities, social, helping and developing others, enterprising, verbal, activities motivating or influencing others, focused on attaining power, things like maybe like a lawyer or a top executive, and finally conventional, rule regulated people who work in corporations. Okay, so you can find the type you are and what type of work that would fit you based on this test. Your book mentions that a more relevant thing today is, do you fit your organization? Person organization fit rather than person job fit. People are attracted to and retained by organizations based on whether their values are compatible. And sometimes you have to ask yourself, do I want to work in a place given my values and given their values? Or is there a fit between these values? Now, the Myers-Briggs type indicator also talks about fit. So in other words, if you have a type, you can fit another type. And if you have a certain type, does it fit a certain career? And Myers-Briggs, it's available on the web. I recommend taking it. I've taken it a few times and I always come out ENTP, extrovert, intuiting, thinking, and perceiving. And it has 4 dimensions, 2 poles on either dimension. And so there are 16 types, 2 to the 4th is 16. And the first one is extrovert versus introvert. So are you energized by being around people, or are you energized by being by yourself? Do you like to go to parties, or do you like to watch TV? Intuitive versus sensing. Do you like the big picture, or do you focus on the detail? Thinking versus feeling. Do you think in logical steps, or do you think by gut feel? Do you draw conclusions by gut feel, or do you think logically? And lastly, judging or perceiving. Do you like to structure your activities, or do you like to do things ad hoc? Okay, I recommend taking the Myers-Briggs. Now, a lot of people criticize Myers-Briggs and some of the other things we're talking about because they say it's not validated. But there's a great book by Tiger and Tiger called Do What You Are. And they talk about the 16 Myers-Briggs types and the types of jobs that they've identified that correlate with the dimension. So there has been some validation of it. I recommend, taking the test, looking at the book. Are these things written in stone? Like if you think you want to be something and Myers-Briggs says you should be something else, does that mean you should drop it? Or for that matter, the John Holland fit measure, person job fit measure, is that written in stone? And the answer is no. I mean, if you really want to do something and the measures don't come out for you, so what? It's not there, these are only stochastically related. They're only, none of these correlations are perfect. They're not mechanical. Probably the most important personality measure in psychology is the big five personality traits. In traits psychology, anyway, the big five personality traits. And these have been studied endlessly. And a lot of organizational psychologists look at these traits to see how they correlate with jobs. Okay, so there's one of the five traits is especially important for every job, and that is conscientiousness. Conscientious means, are you dependable? Do you show up on time? Do you come to class on time? Do you come to class at all? Do you do what you say you're going to do? Clearly, if you come to a job interview and you're late, you're not going to get the job. Okay, if you come, you work in a, now there are some jobs. I was just watching this movie on Netflix about Leonard Cohen and his song Hallelujah, which is probably the most recorded, more people have recorded and sung that song than probably any other rock song in history. It's almost unbelievable how widespread it is, and it's been, the views on YouTube are almost amazing. And one of the interesting things about it is that it the original album was rejected by Columbia. They had paid him in advance to do it, and they thought they had come up with this genius thing, and it got rejected. They rejected it, and the Columbia Records rejected it, and they had to release it 2 years later on a little label. But it eventually got attention by first Bob Dylan sang it, then this Welsh guy, I forget his name, Cole, I think his name was, sang it, and then so on. Jeff Buckley, who was the son of one of my 60s heroes, Tim Buckley, made it really famous. Then it was on Shrek, and then it just exploded. And so basically, it's an amazing story in a way, but and it shows you that rejection is always wrong. That, just because you've been rejected doesn't make the person who rejected you right. You know more than they do. I've been turned down for jobs because I gave the right answer to a question they gave, and they were too dumb to know that it was the right answer. I've had that happen to me a few times. I'm not saying that most of the times when I got rejected for jobs it was because of that, but it did happen a few times. So I mean, just because you get rejected doesn't mean diddly. So, always keep that in mind, that, the famous self-help guru, Tony Robbins, says, if you get rejected, it's good. You should be grateful that you were rejected, because then you can move on to the next thing, and it teaches you something, and you move on to the next thing. So basically, though, conscientiousness, that kind of plugging away, being dependable, keep doing it, and you look at a guy like Leonard Cohen, who put up with that kind of rejection but kept working and struggling, and he'd spent years writing that song, and it ultimately became one of the biggest songs ever written. And but it required, that kind of success often requires, that other songwriters have it easier than he did, but success often requires this plugging away, this conscientiousness. And so it's for good reason that conscientiousness is considered important in almost every job. If you look at the traits associated with success, the one that's really associated with success in almost every job is conscientiousness. The other ones can also be important. I don't mean to say they're not. So basically, a lot depends on the type of job. Like in some jobs, low neuroticism, especially if there's like a lot of teamwork or you have to deal with people. I once gave the NEO, the Big Five personality instrument, to MBA students and to military people who I was also teaching. And the MBA students at NYU, they got like average. They got like 26 out of 48. It was about the median. 24 out of 48, whatever. And when I gave it to the military people, and this was like a range of military, it was like they were mixed, they were from like the different divisions, different branches of the military, and and then different types of people within each branch. I had some special forces people and submarine guys and Air Force and regular Army. I had all kinds of people in the class, and they all got really low neuroticism, like almost zero. And the ones who really got zero were the submarine guys. They were like unbelievable, just so low. It's like some got actual zero, some got 2. It was like just unreal. Like, and so and it's obvious they get selected for that reason. I mean, you can't be neurotic, you can't have a high emotional instability and be running a nuclear submarine. That would be a disaster. So they pick them based on personality. So that I thought that was really interesting. And so different jobs are different. Some jobs require low neuroticism, some high. Some I don't too many jobs require high neuroticism, but if you look at like a singer-songwriter like Leonard Cohen, somebody like that, or there were guys in that movie, like there was a songwriter who was interviewing him from Rolling Stone, and the guy says to him, "Oh, I can't meet with you until 1 because I don't get up till 11." There are some fields where you can do stuff like that. We like that kind of lack of conscientiousness is acceptable. But in most fields, it's not. And in most fields, like the type of person who can create a great song or a great body of music has a level of emotion that wouldn't be acceptable in most jobs. And so, you hear about these actors, but even in there, a number of the actors, I've heard Robert Duvall lost a lot of his opportunities because he was disagreeable. And so basically, this kind of thing varies from field to field, but not totally. So extroversion obviously is important for sales. And can you be a good salesperson as an introvert? Yes, but you use different sales tactics. Openness, that you're willing to experience new things. Do you like to learn about new cultures? Do you like to learn about new ideas? Can you deal with people who have different opinions from you and you're open to what they have to say? Or do you think anyone who's from the opposite party is a mental retard and you're not going to talk to them? Agreeability means how altruistic you are, how friendly you are to other people. And conscientiousness, as I've said, is how dependable you are. Now, we're getting close to the end, but I did want to talk about the dark triad, and that's part of your assignment for tonight. Machiavellianism means how politically manipulative, how politically opportunistic you are. Narcissism means self-love. It's from Greek mythology. And I sure assume you all know who Machiavelli was. He was considered the first modern political scientist. He wrote a great book called The Prince, And in The Prince, he says that it's better for the prince to be feared than loved, and he says that you should do what it takes to retain power, that ethics is not. So this was a departure from Aristotle. Aristotle believed that morality was fundamental to success. Machiavelli said no. So our world is more of a Machiavellian world. We have this belief system, but what I'm saying is I think that's wrong. I don't think that Machiavelli is right in the end. That I think it's true. You can achieve more by being a psychopath, and a disproportionate share of psychopaths are in top management. You know, if you read Babiak and Hare's book, Snakes in Suits, which concerns corporate psychopaths, that they say that, well, no, they don't say it in that book, actually. They did a separate study in a research paper. I misspoke. But basically, in the research paper, what they find is that corporate executives are 4 times more likely to be psychopaths than the average American. The average American is somewhat more likely to be a psychopath than in other countries. So basically, this is associated with success. Now, I think a good book to read, incidentally, I didn't mention in my other session, is Robert Ringer's Winning Through Intimidation. It's not what it sounds like. When he says winning through intimidation, what he's saying is that you got to figure out a way to stand up to the aggressiveness of other people. So other people are intimidating you, and you have to figure out how to win despite that intimidation. That's what he really means. But he deliberately makes the title sound differently because it sold more. But it's a very funny book. It's really a great book, and he outlines in there his biography about how people tried to screw him in life and how he's figured out how to stand up to it. And I think we need to do that in all walks of life, because we are dealing with psychopaths, and we have to learn how to deal with this type of person. And, you know, there are certain industries like real estate, investing, that draw a lot of psychopaths. That, in other words, the type of people who create an Enron or create FTX or create a Theranos, that these people are people we need to protect ourselves from. And I think part of the reason somebody like Warren Buffett is so good is that his analytical skills and personal intuition are great and are able to detect this, that he can see through fraud. You know, one of the things he says, if you can't understand a financial statement, he won't buy the stock. He's very good at analyzing financial statements, better than someone like me. But he said, if he can't understand a financial statement, he'll stay away. He was not involved with Enron, for example. And they made their financial statements extremely complex. And the accounting firm, it was at that time the big 5 accounting firms, and the accounting firm that obliged them, Arthur Andersen, ended up dying. It was shut down because they had assisted this massive fraud. And you'll see that in the movie. So basically, narcissism means self-love. In the 1970s, Christopher Lasch, a great sociologist, social thinker, wrote The Culture of Narcissism. And he was saying that the Americans then had become overly narcissistic. What happened then is Mary Poppins, is peanuts compared to what's going on now with selfies and social media and Facebook and Instagram and all the other stuff you guys are probably on every day. And it's created huge narcissism. And people, and this is related, in the movie, The Social Dilemma, which you're also going to watch, John Haidt mentions that suicide among teenage girls shot up in the last 10 years. And it's because of social media, so this is all part of the dark triad. And lastly, we only have a minute, so I'll wrap this up. Psychopathy, the trait that where people lack conscience, where they it's associated with what am I thinking of? People who are not, the term just left my mind, but people who are not concerned about society, who are not concerned about offending others.
No empathy, they don't have any empathy, is that?
Well, they don't, that's part of it too. They don't
Okay.
have, I'll think of the term, I'll tell you next time. There's all right, no matter, but basically psychopaths have gaps in their conscience, and they can differ. They can differ in ways. Antisocial personality, that's what I was thinking of. Antisocial personality traits. They often have antisocial personality traits. They don't have to, but they can. They in other words, what I'm trying to say, psychopaths typically have antisocial personality, but people with antisocial personality aren't necessarily psychopaths. That's the way I should put it. And so basically, they have gaps in their conscience. So there are people, not common, but they exist, and we all know about it because it gets into the news right away, who are serial killers. So, like the Son of Sam in the 1970s and Jeffrey Dahmer, I don't know when he was in the 80s, I think. And these type of people, these serial killers, they always make good TV series and so on. And basically these people lack a sense of guilt about murdering. Whereas the corporate psychopaths, they may be aghast at murder, but they think nothing about stealing, or they think nothing about lying to people for their money, or stealing, causing people to lose their life savings the way Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling did, and that crew. Andy Fastow, the finance guy, he was another one. I'm sure if Andy Fastow saw somebody beaten to death, he would be horrified. He'd say it's wrong, so on. But he thought nothing about manipulating the books, enriching himself at the company's expense, ultimately bankrupting the company, hurting stockholders. He didn't care anything about that. Nothing, no concern at all there. So basically, psychopaths can have different kinds of gaps in different ways. All right, I apologize. I'm 2 minutes over. If you came late, please see me and I'll mark you present. If you have any questions, please see me after class. Otherwise, have a nice day, and I will send you an email about the next assignment. And don't forget, the discussion board is due tonight. Okay, take care.
Thank you, Professor.
Take care.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay. You're welcome.
Professor, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I saw that you posted something from chat, the new AI tool that I guess people are probably utilizing, and you posted the responses that AI would have generated, and you stated that that's definitely not correct.
I didn't say it's definitely not correct. I said, see where you think it's wrong.
Okay.
I didn't say it's wrong. I said, see what you can come up with that contradicts it.
Okay. So I'm still drafting my responses, and I'm not going to discuss them in detail, but I'm having so when I look at the Jeff Skilling and the Fastow and the Lay, right, I realized that it's not only them as leaders that were bad actors, but it seemed like it was a societal behavior, because you had other banks who signed on to Fastow sale pitch, and that was crazy. Like, these were banks with responsible people. Analysts were not asking and doing their due diligence. So it was almost like a boiling pot of culture that okayed. Once you were really high on the food chain, people looked the other way. right? So was it
say
that
so.
these guys were really as bad as they say, or the environment produced them?
Well, you know, I don't think you can be exonerated just because you're in an environment that's conducive to bad behavior. You say, well, people in Nazi Germany did things they wouldn't have done if it hadn't been Nazi Germany, but they should still be held accountable for what they did. I don't think it's,
So I'm
you
not
know,
looking to
horrible.
exonerate, but what I'm saying is I don't think the accountability goes deep enough. And that's why you have repeat of these behaviors like over time. Because when you think about Anderson, the tax firm, the accounting firm destroying so much evidence, like they had to have known, right? So there were so many people that kept their lie alive.
True. You're right about that. If I didn't say that in class, I mean, I agree with it completely. I think I said it in the other class. It's absolutely in large part a product of the culture. And I think even the monetary policies that America has pursued lend themselves to this kind of behavior.
Right. And that's why I wanted to ask a little more about the management and the survey that was given, because how can we really say that survey is reflective? I mean, what is the real measurement? Yes, we want to believe that people were honest in their feedback, but let's transfer that same survey in an environment and a time like what was going on in Enron. People would say Skilling was a great leader and all of those great stuff, and you know, the output and everything. And how would we measure it? It would be years after that we would be able.
No research is the final word. I mean, all research. One of the first if you ever go for a PhD, the first thing they'll teach you, they'll give you a research methods class. And the first thing they tell you is you never know anything. You know, that everything is subject to threats to validity. That was one of the flaws in the recent public conversations about the vaccines and about COVID. You know, the rhetoric was that, oh, science knows what's best, but anyone who knows about science knows that science never knows anything. At best, science can refute wrong theories, but you never know anything with certainty.
Right.
And so, you know, you should never assume because something's in a textbook that is true. I mean, what they're giving you is the best they can do, but it's never ultimately you know, true in the sense that mathematics is ultimately true. Science is never true like mathematics.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Professor. I'll
Welcome.
definitely try to loop all that into the responses. Thank you.
Great, Raquel. Thank you. Bye now. Okay, anyone else? Someone come late or anything? Okay, Summer, are you here? No? Okay. So we will end this.